The following video has been created without the use of AI. Please support your human content creators by liking the video and commenting something down below. Subscribing is optional. Now please, enjoy the show.
Ken, I'm heading out. Were the words spoken by Mud while grabbing a beige burlap sack. You doing it again? Didn't you say she creeps you out? I mean, last time I guess. It just clicked between us, you know? Clicked. Skeptically, Ken raised an eyebrow before slamming his cleaver down on a piece of meat. It almost looked threateningly, but the shop was open and there were guests, so Ken didn't throw a fit. I wanted to send melancholy this time. Mud chuckled while Mel poked her head from the kitchen. You call me, Ken? Stay put, I'm talking with Slime Ball here. She narrowed her eyes. She hated when she was talked about without her present. You really wanna risk it. Remember what happened when you sent Breadhead last time? Ken's eyes widened in shock. Yeah, I suppose you're right. Snickering, the slimy undead turned to face the door. But don't you come back with one of them smiles. You'll be scaring the customers. Mockingly, Mud removed his head and bowed before Ken. Alright, boss. Message received. Don't you worry. I got it. Mud left while lighting a cigarette. Ken sighed, his shoulder hanging low. So, what was this about? Purred melancholy, scaring Ken so much he almost dropped his cleaver. Mel, it's the Village of Smiles, he said in a dark tone, and a nearby customer immediately jumped up, throwing his tip on the table and leaving, almost screaming his head off. You just don't talk about that cursed place in public like that. I'll give you the quick rundown. The Village of Smiles was the territory in which a very violent gang operated, simply called the Smiling Jesters, and you were their leader, the Queen of Smiles. You were a ruthless monstrosity, praised by your people almost as a god, while feared by your enemies, your name hushed only in whispers. And Canyon and his gang paid you and your people protection money, as the whale was just barely within the borders of your area. Not really in the Village of Smiles, but close enough. It was you who allowed them the way they operated, as long as they paid, of course. And Mud was currently on his way to you in Ken's delivery van. But what he didn't know was that while throwing the money into the bag and lighting up another cancer stick, Mel, who had listened wide-eyed to Ken's explanation, managed to sneak her way on top of the van. She wanted to see this. Queen of Smiles. That sounded amazing. The drive wasn't long, but for her, grabbing onto the vehicle's roof for that duration was still utter torture. Mud drove deep into the city until a very obvious change in scenery and demeanor of the residents occurred. The buildings now were painted in a very dark, almost blood-like red. The dead walking around here all had scarring around their mouths, giving them permanent smiles. Some of them, the more rotten ones, even had their teeth exposed due to lack of skin. Melancholy felt a strange dread creeping up on her, as she imagined someone slicing her face like that. Perhaps Ken was right and she should have stayed home. Mud stopped the vehicle, walked around it while Melancholy was carefully watching him. He took out the money, threw it over his shoulder, and approached a tall, moss-covered skyscraper. The thing looked more like a mausoleum with gargoyle decorations and forebodingly red-stained glass windows. Quietly, the human followed Mud, who entered the building, tipping his head towards a smiling guard. He was dressed in red. Ever-present smile, gave Mutt the creeps. It was dripping with hungry salvia. Clearly, the guy was out for blood, like pretty much everyone in the Village of Smiles. The red eyes of his scanned the surroundings, practically begging for a fight. Considering what seemed to be the consequences of being here, that being the Glasgow smile, better not interact with this thing. While Melancholy tried to find a different entrance, Mutt walked through the building's lobby towards a secretary. "Rita, darling!" Mutt hissed, as the female dead raised her glasses to meet Mutt's eyes. "I got a little appointment." He bounced the sack on his shoulder a little. Rita nodded, and typed into her computer at an agonizingly slow speed. This woman thought she was better than anyone but you, and it was annoying. And with a terribly high-pitched voice, she spoke. "Our queen is currently in a meeting, but I can send you up to management." "Nah, toots. Not happening. The queen gets the cash on hand. No one else." Rita's eyes narrowed. After typing something, she grabbed the phone next to her. Quickly, she turned the dial and said, "Mr. Roscoe, it's the Smiling Dead for an appointment." Right. Got it. Yes, Mr. Roscoe." She hung up the phone. "Turns out the queen is expecting you, Mr. Bud." Rita hired her gaze a little. She knew this meant this was serious business, but just looking and smelling the dead man before her disgusted her so much. With that face of his, the pleasure of being scarred would forever be locked away from him. He would never be one of the smiling jesters. "Level 13, she hissed. "Throne room, I know." Mutt took a wide step away from the desk. "See ya, Rita Toots." The mockery in his tone was obvious, and the only reason he said that was to make Rita even more upset. Commoner, she thought. The Village of Smiles operated more like a cult. A really sophisticated cult, but a cult nonetheless. It was a business and a religious movement, which relished in violence and conformity. And you walked the tightrope on keeping the horde on a tight leash while also feeding it just enough to avoid a massacre. It certainly was a stressful job, but the power it gave you was an orgasmic pleasure that you tasted every day. While Mutt ascended the elevator, Melancholy managed to gain access by kicking in a tiny window that led to the building's basement. Through the opening, she just barely fit, and it for a moment felt as if her shoulders would snap. But once her feet were on the stone ground, her grin widened once again. To her, this was the most fun she had in a long while, and testing her stealth skills would definitely be worth it if the plan she worked on for a few weeks now would ever be put into practice. The basement was moist and reeked of mold and death, but everything smelled like death at least a little bit, so it didn't bother Melancholy. Though one thing was strange down here. A lot of walls with seemingly fresh stone and cement, which had no purpose. The halls were creepy. Golden plaques with names hung above bricked-up archways. Peeking from the hallway she entered into, the next she watched a small procession thankfully moving away from her. 2 security guards were dragging a dead whose mouth had been stitched shut, while in the front walked a dead in crimson robes, clearly their leader. But what was even worse was that the one walking behind them all was a small, child-sized undead pushing a cart with bricks on it. Mel gulped and turned to one of the archways. With her fist, she knocked against the wall, and a minute later, a weak, almost unnoticeable knock came from the other side as an answer. Her right eye twitched in horror. On the other end of things, Mud just left the elevator into a decorated room with a singular door. A guard stood next to it. His eyes narrowed. Mud could feel his hunger. It emanated from him like a certain smell. One wrong move and Mud would not leave this building for a very long time. He knew that. You had showed him the basement, not to brag, not as to threaten, but still it was in the air. The guard silently pointed at a chair next to a decorative plastic plant. Mud nodded and sat down, twiddling his thumbs. So, Roscoe, how's life treating you? The guard's eyes narrowed into slits so tiny, if his eyes didn't glow in a malicious yellow, Mud would have thought his eyes were closed entirely. Been eating better, he muttered. It's good. Good for digestion. Mud nodded. He felt uneasy. But talking with the thing made Mud feel more like he was in the room with another person and not a violent animal. And then suddenly, Mud's ears twitched. He heard something, and his eyes drifted towards the vent opening. He felt watched by something other than Roscoe. In fact, that feeling had been with him the moment he inserted the keys into the van. What was this? Now, that's why he was feeling a little more runny than usually. But in reality, inside the vent was Mel. She had found the entrance to it on the first floor after leaving the basement, and thanks to Ken, she knew exactly how to effectively crawl through a vent. And after reaching the building's boiler room, she practically had the entire place mapped out in her head. It was the same template of all other office complexes in the entire Gaslight district. Well, considering the Village of Smiles enjoyed conformity, there probably weren't many modifications made to the building. With the biggest of grins, she stared at Mud before silently creeping forward towards the throne room. The place was pristine, but smelled of blood so strong that Melancholy's stomach turned. White marble decorated the walls, and a long red carpet led to a slightly elevated stone throne, on which sat an enigmatic feminine figure, thin but not emaciated, black, long, and sticky hair. Her skin was lifeless and tinted blue like those of a drowned corpse. The upper half of her face was covered by a shiny iron mask. It didn't have any straps, yet was seemingly glued to her face. Her mouth was completely torn open. While she still had lips, her cheeks were gaping holes that showed off the horrifying skeletal smile beneath. She was dressed in a long black silk dress that was so thin, if she stood before a light source, her silhouette was going to be visible. Ah, yes. You were as grotesque as you were beautiful. The Queen of Smiles. You're staring down a dead, crouched before you, the leader of another gang under your protection. He couldn't pay. And in your divine grace, you even had given him an extra day to get the money. But at least he was attractive. Please, my queen. He raised his head, pleading. His lower jaw almost fell from his head. After all, you had torn away at his cheeks. It's just too much. It's just so much. Just please give me a week and I double it, I swear. You didn't move. Like a statue, you stared him down. Inside your head, the gears were moving. And then an idea came to you. Walling the dead in for decades ruined their minds. Cementing them got rid of them for good, and you didn't want to get rid of this one for good. He was too cute. Torture was too temporary, not really a lesson. More of just something you did for fun when someone annoyed you. But there was another method that you used for scum that couldn't pay. You snapped your fingers, causing two guards to jump him. He was held down on his knees as you slowly approached him. Melancholy's mouth dropped as she saw you move. Seductive, determined, evil, but also kinda hot. If only she had her camera. You stop before the pitiful excuse of the dead. Bartolo, this isn't the first time. Your voice was like poisoned honey, thick with sweetness and death. You place both hands on his shoulders. But soon, I'll make you something beautiful. Bartolo's eyes wide in horror, and with a movement as quick as a snake, you severed his head. It was so fast, Mel almost didn't catch the blades that quite literally came out of your wrists. Years ago, before you became the Queen of Smiles, you were an assassin called Nightingale, a talented one at that. Yet, a great pain threshold too, and underwent torturous surgeries to become a living weapon. A blade could practically be pulled out of any inch on your body, and your bones were so damage-resistant any blunt attack was repelled with ease. You grabbed the dead's head before it fell to the ground. Smiling, you held it in your palm. Yet the curse of unlife revived him. His body twitched with an eerie green glow before falling over on its hands. It moved. Definitely alive, but not for long. And then, alive again. You then threw the head towards the dead Mel couldn't see. James encased it and sent the body to prepare. Yes, my queen. Out of Mel's view stepped a small statured dead who picked up the constantly reviving beheaded, carrying it towards the door to the outside of your throne room. You had a system where attractive dead who pissed you off worked off their dead in love hotels. Their heads, not really needed for that. You encased them in cement until the debt was paid off. Hundreds of cubes had been stored all around the building, as a reminder. And with a gracious, flowing movement, you sat back down on the throne. No words were said until James returned. Well, Queen, next is a protection money payment specifically requested to be delivered to you. You tilted your head. I see. Well, man, let them inside already. James bowed and rushed back to the door through which he had just entered. She's expecting you, commoner, hissed the small dead towards Mud. Yeah, James. Aren't we on first name basis by now anyways? Dwarf, came Mud's snide remark. But as Ken's brother stepped into the hall, the atmosphere instantly shifted. Even Mel could feel it. Your stance visibly relaxed. Mud stepped before you, reaching the first step of your throne, and threw the cash on the ground. Got your money, Queenie, he snickered before going down on one knee. Mel's eyes widened. She never expected Mud to be capable of such chivalry. James, you snapped your fingers and your butler took the money. Oh, and while you count, take the guards with you. I want to be alone with this one. But my queen... You gave him a look. Yes. Mel's eyes narrowed suspiciously as he stood up from your throne. Mud, how long has it been? You purred. Your voice was filled with tainted seduction that would have given Mud goosebumps if his skin was capable of such. Well, Toots, I don't know. Don't remember much. You approach her with calculated slowness, licking your lips. What do you remember? The way you screamed when I pulled your hair. Mel almost burst out into laughter. She couldn't believe what she just heard. Wasn't it you who cried like a baby after I sunk my teeth into your disgusting flesh? You stepped around Mud, sizing him up like a lioness her prey. And as you finished circling him, you were mere inches away from his face. Your foul breath fanned over the raw seams of his ruined skin. You let your fingers hover just above his chest, teasing and without mercy. The silk of your dress ghosted against his clothes, whispering promises of violence and pleasure. Mud tilted his head slightly, his grin crooked and inviting. Narrowing your eyes, you pressed your body to his, feeling the heatless thrum of undeath against your own cold flesh. Your hand slid up his chest, tracing the fabric of his clothes and melted sinew like a musician tuning an instrument. A blade of yours flickered into existence at the tip of your finger, delicate as a kiss, deadly as a guillotine. You dragged it lightly along his collarbone, letting it sink just enough to taste him without breaking him. Mutt shivered, a low sound rumbling deep in what passed for a chest. You reveled in it, breathing in the scent of ash, rot, and tobacco soaking into your senses. Your iron mask clinking softly as you tilt your head, studying him as an artist might study a canvas before the first stroke. You move with the grace of a wraith, every step measured to taunt, every brush of skin a sharpened promise. Mud let his hands rest on your waist, loose, easy, daring you to continue, daring you to destroy. You clawed at his shirt, pulling it apart, the buttons scattering like teeth from a broken jaw. Your mouth found the exposed lines of his skeletal throat, biting, not to feed or destroy, but to mark, leaving behind your lipstick. He answered you with a sharp pull at your hips, dragging you closer, anchoring you to him. You grinned against his runny flesh, your smile wide enough to cut. The thin fabric of your dress tangled around his fingers, a shroud wrapping both of you in impending sin. You twisted your body against his, a blade sprouting from your thigh, slicing the air just shy of his ribs. A silent warning for him to not overstep his boundaries. But Mud only laughed low and lazy, the sound vibrating through both of your ruined forms. Your hand found the back of his neck, yanking him down, forcing surrender even as you offered none. The clash of your bodies was less a dance and more a war fought in stolen touches and vicious hunger. You drove him backwards towards the throne, each step a declaration of ownership, each kiss a brand burned into rotten skin. Mud fell into the seat, sprawling like a king of nothing beneath a queen of knives. You straddled him, the black river of your dress pooling around the two of you, swallowing marble and red velvet alike. Your fingers sank into his scalp, but what little there was left, yanking his head back, exposing the ruin of his throat to your hunger. You licked a slow curl line up his jaw, tasting the acrid tang of decay and smoke and victory. Your hips moved against his with the rhythm of a funeral drum, slow, brutal, inevitable. Mud gripped you tighter, fingers digging into your hips with a desperate reverence, as if you were the only thing left worth bleeding for. You carved your name into him with teeth and claw, not for love, but domination. He answered with the kind of savage loyalty that only could be born from a monster. The throne room echoed with the silent war of your union, broken only by the rustle of fabric, the scrape of bone, the whisper of blades unsprung. You claimed him over and over, branding him in ways flesh could never forget, forging him into a new form that was more suited for your desires. When you finally stilled against him, sweat running down your face, the only sound was the cackle of a cigarette burning down the ash. He was exhausted, breathing heavily, while you rubbed your naked body with your hands. You enjoyed the feeling of a slime all over your body. Meanwhile, Melancholy's eyes watered. This was the hottest thing she had ever seen, and somehow it had involved mud of all people.
Good job for reaching this point in the video. Typing cucumber water in the comments below to show everyone that you did. Anyways, we reached also the ending of the video, and I would like to shout out all of my lovely channel members, specifically my darling stewards. We have Mimi Momo, Jaws, Melofia, Maxicat, Allison Watkins, Mystic Jade 111, Giovanna Moretti, Twilight Mia, Angry Boxman, Hella, Anonymous Weep, and Nicodemus D. Without you, I could not do this. And without my other channel members, I could not do this either. Your support is greatly appreciated. And please remember to like and subscribe. That would really help me out, as that also tells the YouTube algorithm that you enjoyed the video. And it would lead to my video being more advertised. So please do that. Thank you.